Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another post-game show here at the Hockey Raiders YouTube channel. And we're covering the Edmonton Oilers Colorado Avalanche series, which is now 3-0. Colorado has won the first three games of this series. Now on the brink of making to the Stanley Cup Final. And after Game 4, at this game, three goals. It was 4-2 with the empty netter. But JT Compher scores again. Nichushkin had a couple goals. McDavid opened the scoring really quickly in the first minute or so. So it looked like the Oilers were going to be off to the races, but, ended up being a loss and now 3-0 down. So I'm joined in by Jim, Parsons, Kerry Collins, like always on our post-game shows here. We'll start with you, Kerry, this time. I always start with Jim, but we'll start with Kerry on the, Colorado now up 3-0. Played a bit more of a tighter game this time. What was your initial impressions of this game after this one?
Well, when they get through the first period with 7 minutes on the power play and they don't get anything and they're only even, I thought that's huge for Edmonton. And they kind of did what Edmonton did in that first game. They just kept sort of plugging away. They weren't really down, but they just kept sort of going. And to get 2 goals from Nichushkin, that's the type of game that he's going to do that in.
Yeah.
He's done that. He's only scored a couple of goals, I think 3 times or something this year, including the playoffs. So it's like, and it's in those types of games. So, but yeah, the Compher play was just a huge hustle play right after a heartbreaking, crossbar and stuff. But it just seems like those were the types of bounces they needed to get. Both of Nichushkin's goals were kind of fluky. And, then you look at that play where Bouchard hits the crossbar and it goes flying back 70 feet. And, it turns into, a weaker kind of goal, but it just was like, they just had those breaks. They just made those breaks happen. And they know they're not going to outscore everybody 5-1 or 5-2. And, for them to come out and win a game like this says quite a bit against a team like this.
Yeah, for sure. Edmonton had I don't know if they had a better game. They did have a better jump on this game. Jim, what was your impressions of this game? They did get it off on the right foot. McDavid scoring right away, but ended up losing this game.
Yeah, this was a game of momentum killers, basically, is what this had. Like 38 seconds in, they score. First 5 seconds of McDavid's shift, he gets a goal. So you're thinking, okay, things are getting off really strong. And then Evander Kane goes and takes an incredibly stupid penalty, which puts them down for 5 minutes, which then, of course, McDavid's going to be barely on the ice for it because he doesn't kill penalties. So you've got McDavid super hot. He's starting strong. Oh, and by the way, we're going to take him off the ice for about 5 minutes. So then they actually kill it off and they think, okay, now we've got the swing again. We've got the momentum, and they don't do much with it, right? They don't really build on it. The crowd's back with them. They're like, okay, right on, we're going. And they don't take advantage of it. And the Oilers just did that all night tonight. Every time they had something going, they let it slip. McLeod scores, not much later, Colorado scores. And this is just the thing that the Oilers do, right? They can't seem in this series anyway, for sure, to build on any momentum that they gain. And they absolutely needed to do that tonight. So I didn't think the Oilers played a terrible hockey game. I thought Colorado played better than they did. But I just thought the Oilers couldn't get the momentum going. And once they had it, they certainly couldn't keep it. And it was just, when you can't do that, you don't give yourself a chance to go up 2-0, maybe 3-0. You're killing 7 minutes worth of penalties. And all you're doing is hoping to stay afloat and maybe tie, maybe be up by 1. And against Colorado, that's not going to be good enough, right? So I just didn't think they took advantage of the opportunities that they had to sway this game in their favor. And when you don't do that, you're in real trouble against this team.
Yeah, that's very true. And the thing is, Edmonton did come into the game, like you said, going that 11-7 going 11-7. And then, Ryan McLeod scores a goal. He was a really good player, really played really well in this game. Thought I saw his speed a lot. And then, they also brought in, guys to kill penalties as well. What do you think of the additions they brought into the lineup and the other guys other than McDavid that kind of stepped up in this game?
Well, Brad Malone was good. He didn't play a ton, but he's a penalty killer, right? And I thought he was really instrumental in that 5-minute major. He played like 90 seconds of that penalty kill.
Yeah.
I thought he was really, really strong there. He was getting mixed up with other penalties in the game at the end. He's kind of stirring the pot a little bit. He's never going to play much. In fact, I was actually surprised that he was the guy they slotted in. I thought maybe they put in Devin Shore or something like that. But they went with Brad Malone. He played okay. The 11-7 thing, like, yeah, they did it, but Chris Russell didn't play all that much, right? So Darnell Nurse still got 21 minutes worth of game. And I thought, this dude can't catch a break. Like, some of this is on him, and some of it is just super unlucky. I mean, this guy's series has gone the exact opposite way that it needs to go. Like, sometimes you got to outwork your bad breaks, and he hasn't been able to do it. So he tips the one in on himself on his own goalie, and then he shoots one from across the rink outside over the glass, which winds up in another 2-minute penalty. Like, he didn't have anything going. So if you're going to play the 11-7, play the guy that you've added, right? Like, give Russell a few more minutes, limit the guys that are struggling a little bit. And Darnell Nurse, again, struggled. So I don't know exactly why. Even Evan Bouchard only played 13 minutes. I thought he was pretty good, other than that bad break where he hit the post and then they wound up scoring. I thought Bouchard was one of the more dangerous defensemen. I thought Tyson Barrie had a good game. There was a lot of things going right, but they just didn't take advantage of the fact that they went 11-7. And then when you're like, okay, now Colorado's got 11 forwards because Kadri's out, it's pretty even Steven, right? So you're like, okay, we should have an opportunity. And they just didn't take advantage of it. So I was a little surprised by that. Putting in Malone was a little bit of a surprise to me. And then not playing the 7th defenseman very much, I thought was a bit of a shocker too, especially because Russell's a veteran and he plays strong defensively and can be physical. So I'm not sure why they didn't do it, but maybe it was just the way the flow of the game and trying to catch up and whatever else. I'm not sure.
And on top of that, to piggyback off that with Russell, he probably played like 10 minutes, but this is the type of game where he can impact, make an impact, kind of a really tight, he's a shot blocking guy. Of course, everybody knows that. That's the kind of game where he can have a little bit more of an impact. And I was surprised, especially he was out there, he had a couple of blocked shots right away, one on that power play. And it was like, oh man, this guy's gonna, maybe cause a little bit of a headache here. And then you just never saw him. He was just never out there. And I just was wondering, he's got to play a little bit more.
Yeah. And speaking of the power plays, I don't really think both teams' power plays have looked horrible in this series. I don't know if that we were talking about special teams being some kind of a difference. I don't think any of their power plays have been that good. And especially in this game, I think the Oilers probably would have liked their power play to do a bit more, even though they had only 2 in the game, right? So, Jim, what do you think the power play? How did it? Do you think it should look better against a team like Colorado, or?
It certainly hasn't looked as fluid as it's looked in other series. Like sometimes the Oilers like bang, 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 and it's in, right? Like it's just, they are so strong at this that you would think, given the opportunity, they might be able to take advantage every once in a while. But credit where credit is due. Colorado's penalty killing's been pretty decent. And the same thing on the other side too, right? Like that 5-minute major, Edmonton's penalty killing was really good there, right? So I can understand why some of these power plays are struggling a little bit. Just because the speed and the skill and the ability to kill these will hamper your numbers, right? Your power play, which is typically strong, is not going to be as strong when you've got guys on you all the time. But I just don't think that the penalties killed or the power play has been enough for the Oilers. They haven't gotten in front of the goalies. They haven't been, blocking or, blocking his view, really getting in front of the crease and stuff like they typically would do. Some of the plays that they set that work really, really well in the regular season, just they haven't done them or tried them or been able to pull them off. So I can see why it struggled. It needs to be better because if it doesn't happen, they're not going to win.
Yeah. And on the other side, Kerry, Colorado's gotten by scoring even strength, and their power play, like that 5-minute power play, didn't score on. The 5-on-3 in the last game they didn't score on. They are up 3-0. So they have some leeway to make mistake, have a power play not work. But does it have to be better in game 4 to kind of close out this series? Because it hasn't really been that much of a difference so far.
Yeah, I think just even moving forward, because it's going to be tough for them to lose 4 games in a row now. And even just moving forward, they just have to, really they've got to get more moving forward. I mean, there's been a couple of games where there's been twice in this series, you get the power play at the end there. I think that gave them 5, and they had the other one where they had 7. And that was a couple of, piled on sort of at the end with, extracurricular activities, as we like to say. But it's like, still, I mean, the 5-minute power play, you look at Colorado's power play and you see 5 minutes and you think, okay, just hold them to 1. Like we got to just hold them to 1. And and that penalty kill was great. I mean, I think Smith made 9 saves. There was a couple of blocked shots, 8 saves. They took one away, I think. Then you had some blocked shots and stuff. And it was like, that was when you were kind of like, oh, wow, this is Edmonton's game here. And then it just all of a sudden, Nichushkin gets that second goal, and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, it just took the air out of everybody. So, I mean, yeah, but going forward, not only just in this series to try and, slam the door and finish this off, because they've had a hard time finishing St. Louis off. But even moving forward, it's just got to be better if they expect to, take out one of those other Eastern Conference teams.
That's right. And, we've talked about the 5-minute power play, and the result was because of Kadri getting hurt off an Evander Kane. They call it boarding, hit him in the numbers, and he went down. Jim, do you think that warrants a suspension? I mean, it certainly was a 5-minute penalty, major. Should it have any supplemental discipline, or you think the 5-minute was good?
Well, there'll definitely be some supplemental. It could be a fine. If you look at the Brandon Hagel hit in the series with Tampa in Florida, it was very similar to that, and all he got was a fine. The difference maybe here is, 1, that it's Evander Kane, and 2, that Kadri's going to be out for the series. If he's out for longer than that, who knows, right? On first, whatever, I would say no, but you never know, right? When you got a guy who's out and he could be out for a while. Like, I remember when the hit happened, there was a lot of people like, is Kadri selling this thing? Right? There's a lot of people wondering, how much is he milking this? Like, it was a bad hit. Don't get me wrong. It was absolutely a 5-minute boarding penalty. But there were a lot of people going, well, maybe Kadri's just selling it, right? And then he doesn't come back, and you're like, okay. And then you get the tweets. It's like, hey, he's out for the series, and you're like, uh-oh. So not only do you feel bad for a guy who's injured, but you also are like, well, maybe this could have some sort of extra tacked on to it. And if that's the case, you're down 3-0 in the series. And if you might not have Evander Kane, like, it's certainly not going to get more than 1 game. My initial reaction is he's going to get a fine, and he'll probably play. But and it's playoffs, right? So you never know. But if he's out for the 4th game, that's really trouble for the Oilers.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think you're probably looking at a fine, but when you're dealing with the dartboard that NHL player safety throws at and how they hand out discipline, it just seems like you never know with the other guy. Like you said, Kane, maybe, because it's him, maybe he gets a game or something, but it just seems like some of these have been kind of inconsistent. So I would say that's nothing more than a fine, but it's hard because you just never know what they're going to say or do.
Well, on that, Kerry, Kadri's out for the rest of the series and possibly longer into the next one if they do make it through. What does that do to the Avalanche? I mean, we know how bad, he got suspended in the last playoffs, and that really hampered what the Avalanche were doing for moving forward. And he's been so good throughout their run here. Does that affect them negatively moving forward? I mean, they're going to have to replace him. I don't think they can.
Yeah, he's a tough guy to replace because he could go off for 3 points, 2 goals and an assist, or 3. He had 3 assists in game 2, and he can go off for 3-4 points anytime. And he's been really good in this playoffs. He had the hat trick against St. Louis. He's particularly been really good on the road. I think he scored all but one of his goals on the road this year. So he's just been a solid guy in the middle of that second line for them the entire season. I mean, he missed a few games here and there with, the normal bumps and bruises, I suppose, but he's been so big, especially in the playoffs, that it's hard just to slot another guy up there. I mean, guys like Compher have been good. And I mean, Arturi Lehkonen was really good in that game, even though, I mean, mainly on, from his standpoint of two-way play, but replacing a guy like Kadri is hard just because, 1, he's going to bring some scoring. 2, he's going to bring some grit, and he's a very emotional guy for them. And that's a lot of what the playoffs is about, is emotion. So having him out an extended period of time, I mean, it's not going to help him for sure. It's just, it'll be interesting to see how long it is. If he just misses this series, it's one thing, but if it bleeds into 1, 2, 3 games of the next series, that's something completely different.
So who do you insert in the lineup for him? Because he won't be in game 4. Who would you put in to replace him?
I mean, that's a tough one just because he's really kind of shook up the lines, but the way Compher's been playing, he's got to be the guy they move up there. I mean, if you stick in, right now they're running, Landeskog, McKinnon, Nichushkin, and then you've got Lehkonen, Kadri, Rantanen. You move Compher up in there. He's probably playing with as much confidence as Kadri was for sure. He's got 5 goals in the last 4 games. I think that's just probably the guy that they pop up there, then, because when you look at the other centers they've sort of got that they've been running with you. I don't know does he leave Compher there to put Darren Helm all the way up on the second line? I just don't see that. I just don't see that happening. So who knows? Maybe they shake up a bunch of stuff. I don't know, but I would just be surprised if it wasn't just, hey, Compher, you're up, and then because they've moved guys like Logan O'Connor around on that 4th line all year. He's played all the way across it. So it's do they lose something by moving Compher up there? Yeah, but do they lose as much as they would have, say, in February? No, because I think Compher's playing so much better now that he, still gives them a little bit of that spark.
Yeah, Compher's definitely the guy because he's been really good throughout the playoffs too. So may lose some stuff. We'll see how big of a difference it's going to make a difference, him being out of the lineup. So we'll see how big of a difference it is. Jim, moving into game 4, this is now do or die for the rest of the way for the Oilers. What do they have to do to win a game here and to move and force a game 5?
Well, a couple things probably. I think they need to consider shaking up the lineup a little bit. Like, you got to get some guys in there that are gonna, create havoc on offense. The Oilers got, I think, 27, 28 shots tonight, but it wasn't enough. Like, it's just not enough. They need some guys that can really stir up the offense. And whether that's Holloway or whether that's whatever. Now, I don't know how many guys are injured. Like, Yamamoto seems out. Archibald didn't play tonight. So there could be some of that. If you don't have Kane, that's a real problem. But they're going to have to put in some guys that have that speed and skill to kind of get there. I'm assuming you'll go back to Mike Smith, although I said it in the last game. He hasn't had the brain fart, yet, but he had it tonight, right? That 3rd goal that squeaked through him, that was on him. Like, that was, he played so good for the rest of the game. And then he did that. There were times that he made me nervous, but he still was very strong and he kept those again. And then he did that. Right. So I think you'll go back to Mike Smith. I don't imagine that Koskinen is going to get the call here. I think you need to flip it up a little bit with the roster. I would stick with the 11-7 and run that stuff. But man, I would just thinking you got to get Draisaitl, McDavid going here and whatever you need to do to get those two working. I don't know after the way that Draisaitl fell down today and got taken out by McKinnon, if he's struggling even more now with an injury. It's a tough battle, man. It's going to be very, very hard for them to, at this point, all you got to do is think to yourself, let's not get swept, right? Like, that's the mentality. One game, let's not get swept, even if we lose this series, which they don't want to think about, but they got to go, well, all this wonderful stuff we did for the regular season and the great work we've done through the playoffs is going to be erased in Oilers Nation if we get swept by the Colorado Avalanche. So you just got to not get swept. That's the first thing you got to think about. Play as hard as you can to not have that happen and then take it from there. And if they can do one game at a time and think like that, maybe they'll have a shot. I mean, they're still at home. They got one more. They can keep it alive. They're facing an uphill battle, but man, they just got to not get swept. That's got to be the mentality.
Yeah, it's going to be game 7 from now on for the Oilers. So other side, Kerry, I mean, it looks like Colorado's been able to close out series. They haven't they kind of let St. Louis back in a little bit, but what do they have to do to close this out? Because I'm sure they don't want to leave the door open, even a crack for this Edmonton team who can score goals.
No, especially being, a little dinged up. You got whatever's going on with Compher. You got now whatever's going on with Kadri, things like that. you don't know how long that other series is going to go. So you want to get done with this as fast as you can and start mending a little bit of those wounds, because you don't think they're going to get the, whatever it's called, you don't think they're going to come back and knock you out 4 times in a row. They swept through Nashville. They were up 3-1 and up late against St. Louis in that game, 5, and then they lost that one in overtime and then came back in game 6 and won. So that's really been the only hiccup that they faced. I mean, some of the biggest adversity, that they faced against St. Louis was just in that game too. And other than that, it was that little bit of a comeback, but you've got to expect that from Edmonton. You can't just think, oh, they're shrugging their shoulders and mailing it in. So, and I think they've got to finish this just because they're dealing with some of those nagging injuries, kind of like we just talked about with the Oilers and stuff. So they've got to wrap this up as fast as they can. And they're 6-0 on the road in the playoffs. So, I mean, everybody talked about their home ice advantage, and I don't think anybody dreamed that they'd be 6-0 on the road throughout the postseason with one game. They're one win away from the Stanley Cup Final. They haven't lost away from home yet. And I mean, that's a huge story that not a lot of people are talking about, but it's just, they just keep finding a way to do it. And tonight was a perfect example. So if they can find another way to do it and keep going, even without a guy like Kadri, I mean, that'll be huge for them if they can, close this out in the 4th game without having to come back and, deal with it again in Colorado.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if we're talking about, the first team in the Stanley Cup Final after Game 4, or we're talking about going back to Colorado with Edmonton having a win. So thanks, Jim. Thanks, Kerry, for coming on the post-game show. We will see you after Game 4.